This conference
how
will
it
now be
works.
recorded.
In the previous session, we have seen what is hospital workflow and what are the different events that we come across when we look at hospital workflow. And we have also seen what is the structure of an HL7 message, what are delimiters, how we can read an HL7 message, and what are the essential how segments are interrelated with each other, how components, how fields are present within a segment, and how components are present within a field. So today we will take a little deeper look at how HL7 message is a um, event-driven messaging methodology and how it executes and all. So to start with, we did take a look at the message structure. We had different segments, and each segment has its own name. The first three letters of the segments indicate what it is all about. So for example, if you look at PID, it indicates that it is patient identification segment. A message indicates that it is a message segment header. So in this way, when we look at all the different segments that we come across for each message type that we have, we'll take a deeper look at each one of them. What are the fields present in each segment and what are the components present in each segment? But before that, we need to understand how many events are possible. What are the different events that we have? What are the names of those events from HL7 perspective? So as we have discussed earlier in the previous session that a trigger event is nothing but a real world event where the necessity of data flow from one system to the another system is generated. So when I say that, it means when a patient is registered at the front end, the necessity there has been created a necessity where the data should flow from the PM system to the HR system, or else doctor will not get to know who the patient is, what is the appointment, what he is coming for, and when he has the appointment and all. So that event which is happening at the front end has created the necessity of the data to flow, to leave one system and to enter the other system. This data flow or this event is called as a trigger event. So there are many such kind of events when we look at the hospital workflow. So if we break them down, we have a registration, we have appointments which are being scheduled, we have labs that will be placed during the process of an encounter. So what do I mean by an encounter? Encounter is nothing but when the patient actually meets the doctor and discusses about his problem. That particular scenario is called as an encounter or represented as an encounter um, in the hospital terminology. So when an encounter is happening, doctor might place few lab orders, and they might get a result back within the same day or the next day, depending on the lab's availability and patient's availability. So that can be considered as two different events. And then we have charge related aspects, charge related events. So once the appointment is completed, then if doctor has performed any procedure, then we see that the charge information is flowing back from EHR to the PM system. And there are two other events like pharmacy or insurance events. So these are dealt in a different messaging standard system, which is called as X12 or EDI. And pharmacy is based on ERX standards. So we won't be looking at that one. We'll be looking at other events which are related to HL7. So as we look at these, each of these are the general terms that we are referring to: registration, appointment schedule, or placing orders and receiving results. All of these are general terms, but each of these have their own naming convention when we talk from HL7 perspective. So let us look at each one of them. So registration is represented as ADT. So what does ADT mean? ADT means it's admit, discharge, and transfer. So as the name itself suggests, whenever there is a patient admit or discharge or transfer, we deal with the demographic information of the patient, like what is his name, data, details, and all of those things, and insurances, whether the patient has insurance or not. So all of these demographic details, um, will be dealt when we are dealing with admit or discharge of a patient. So, which is why any registration message will always be represented in the form of an ADT message, and this is called as a message type. And then we have appointment schedule, which is represented as with SIU. SIU means scheduling information unsolicited. So the word unsolicited means it is unidirectional. The reason why appointments are unidirectional is whenever the appointments are scheduled in the PM system, they flow from PM to EHR. But we will never see a scenario where appointment is being scheduled at the doctor's desk and flowing to somewhere else, or somewhere else. Instead of saying somewhere else, like we can say that appointments don't flow backwards from the doctor system to the PM system. When I say doctor system, from the EHR system to the PM system, we always see that appointments are unidirectional, and that makes sense when it is created in the PM system and flowing over to the EHR system, which is why the term unsolicited is used, which means it is a unidirectional message flow. So appointments will flow from PM to EHR. So the full form of that is scheduling information unsolicited. And then we have lab systems, which are lab messages, which are ORM and ORU. ORM is nothing but order message, and ORU is nothing but observation result unsolicited. Again, results are unidirectional, so which is why they specifically mentioned that it is unsolicited. We don't see results flowing back from hospital to labs. They only flow from labs to hospital. And finally, we have charges, which is indicated as DFT. So DFT means detailed financial transaction. So if you observe, most of the times the names itself or the acronyms itself indicate what they are for, and what kind of information those particular message types would have. And now these are on a very high level. Now, these events can even be broken down into different sub-events. I mean, those are called as actual events when we talk from real world perspective. So let us take a look at what are the possible events that we have. So when we talk about registration, we'll end up in having two different events, which is new patient registration and update of existing data that the patient already has. So whenever the patient is visiting the hospital, the first question by the receptionist would be, is it the first time or have you been here already? If it is the first time, they will follow a different procedure that is considered as an event, which is nothing but to grab all the details, take all the details from the patient, and save that patient record or enter that patient details and save the patient record in the system. This is one event. If the patient is coming for the second time, or his data is already present in the system, in that scenario they will ask a different question, whether they want to update any information like phone number, email address or insurance or anything. So in case if there is any update, they will go ahead and update those details in the system, and this is considered as another event. Similarly, you have three different events for appointments, which is nothing but creating a new appointment, update of an existing appointment, or deleting an appointment. So these are three different events that we can expect when we talk from appointment scheduling perspective. And when we look at charges, we see that there is only one event presenting charges. And when we look at labs, we have two different events. One is placing order and the other one is receiving results. So finally, we are ending up in having 8 different event types, which are the most frequent ones and which will cover a large part of the hospital workflow that we have discussed. So most of the HL7 related messaging transactions are anyways covered within these event types. There are other event types like query event type, and there are other event types like MDM message type, and so on, which we'll look at once we complete all of these things. But these are the basic events that we come across in the entire hospital workflow. So, as I said, each of these are the regular names that we are looking at, but they have their own naming convention from HL7 perspective. We have seen that for registration, we represented it with an ADT message, and the events and for appointments, we represent with SIU, charges we represent with DFT, and orders with ORM, results with ORU. And now let us look at the possible event types within each one of these message type. So ADT is the message type, and within ADT, for new patient registration, we will use ADT A04 or A28. Any one of them can be used. And for update of existing patient record, we can use A08 or A31. So these are two events possible. There are other events. There are hundreds of events within each message type, but the most frequently ones used are A28 and A31 or A04 or A08 for new and update patient registrations. In case if there is any other information, I mean, once you kickstart with real-time HL7 implementations, you will see that out of 100%, there are 15 to 20% of implementations where you will come across usage of A05, usage of A01. But the most frequent ones are A28, A31, A04, and A08. And when we look at appointments, we had three different possible events for appointments. Those are nothing but S12, S14, and S15. So S12 is nothing but a new patient register, a new appointment schedule, as we have seen, and S14 is for update of an existing appointment. So in case if the patient is changing the time, or in case if they want to add some comments or add some special notes, they will update the existing appointment on the PM system, and this updated information will flow over to EHR. So such events or such events are represented with SIU S14 message type. And we have S15. S15 is for cancellation of an appointment. So in case if the patient want to cancel the appointment, then when the message is generated from the PM system, it will have the message type of SIU S12, S15 for a cancellation. And DFT, we see that we have DFT PO3 as the event type. So there is only one single event possible for DFT, which is detailed financial transaction. So we won't get confused there. And with respect to orders and results, we have two different events. Orders will be represented with O01 and results will be represented with R01. So these event types will cover, as I said, these event types will cover most of the hospital workflow. We have additional event types which we'll take a look at once we complete all of these events. So any questions here from anyone?
No.
Okay, great. So we will
Oh,
quickly take, yep.
yeah. One question I would like to ask. What about like surgery codes? Is that any other like I guess there's a surgery code that you use? Any time we're gonna come across that one?
What kind of surgery codes? Is this Jason?
Yes, this is Jason.
Hey Jason.
Yeah.
So what kind of surgery codes you're talking about?
Like for you said there's order codes and then it gives the results and that
Uh-huh.
results are for the labs, correct?
Right.
So is there anything like if the patient go to like OR, is there any codes for that?
Yeah, we see it depends on the lab who we are working with. So few people will use Linux codes, few might use SNOMED codes. So it depends on the lab as well as the hospital what code they are using. And at
Okay.
times we'll see that you are using CPT codes as well in order to place orders and receive the results back.
Oh, okay.
So in the HL7 message, we have placeholders in order to send these codes. We'll be looking at them once we come to ORM and ORU message types. When we look at details of each and every segment, we'll be taking a look at where exactly these codes will pass.
Okay.
Okay. So now that we have covered what are the possible event types that we have, so we will look at each message type and what are the possible segments that we get to see in each message types, and what are the important fields in each of these segments that we have to know in order to perform any implementation. Or so HL7 is if you're a beginner with HL7, then a lot goes through in memorizing to understand and memorize what goes in which field. So based out of my experience, important, I have highlighted few important fields which we usually need to know when we are running through real-time implementations or when we are running through real-time project. So I have highlighted them in green. I will share these documents with you guys. You people can go through it. Um, so first we will look at the message segment. So in any HL7 message, there is one segment which is a compulsion. So that is called as an message segment, which is nothing but the message segment header. As the name itself indicates, it is a header segment where it will give you basic information about what the message is all about, what is the message type, where the message is starting from, and where the message is going to. And all of this information, very basic information. Like if you look at a textbook, you will see that in the index page, you will have information about what we have in the entire content of the textbook. In a similar way, a message segment contains the basic index related information. So it is a required segment for all the message types, all the HL7 message types that we deal with. So we'll look at few important fields of this particular message type. So if you look at MSH1, MSH1 is a field separator, except for MSH1, which is an exception. MSH1 is the only field where you will have field separator. In MSH2, you have the encoding characters. So let me pull out an HL7 message. So this is a sample HL7 message that we are looking at. So the first field is the field separator. Except this is an exception only for MSH segment, where you will see that the first field is field separator, and the second field you will see that we have delimiters, message delimiters. So in the previous session we did see that we have message delimiters which are like punctuations for HL7 grammar. Like we have full stop, space, and all of these things in English grammar. In the same way, we have message delimiters in the HL7 message. So these will help us to divide the fields, divide the components, separate the components, and identify the repetitive elements within a field, and so on. So we have these indications so that the message reader or the message or whatever the tool is interpreting the message can clearly understand that these are the delimiters used in this particular HL7 message. And from next field, we have within two pipes, we have discussed that within two pipes we have a field, and Field can be divided into multiple components, and those components are separated with the help of a caret. So let's look at MSH3. MSH3 is nothing but sending application and sending facility. So sending application in the sense, now why do we need to deal with generate an HL7 message? Where is the necessity? Necessity raises when we need to transfer the message or data of a patient from one system to the another system, which means there is a source who is going to generate a message, there is a destination who is going to receive a message. So the sending system information should be present within the HL7 message, which is why we have a message 3. So in message 3, we will mention the sending application information, whereas in message 4, we will send the sending facility related information. What is sending facility? The location or the physical facility location information will be sent in message 4. In a similar way, who is going to receive the message? So that information will also be included in the message segment. So message 5 will have receiving application, which is nothing but, if you take a look at our example, message 3 will be PM, message 4 will be some location, and message 5 will be EHR, and message 6 will be receiving facility, whatever the physical facility of the physical location of that facility is. And message7 is date and time of the message. So it will help us to identify when exactly the message got generated from the source system. message9 is message type. Message type is nothing but the message type and the event, combination of message type and the event that we have discussed. So you will see that it always has two components. First one is the message type and the second one is the event type. So you will see multiple message events. For example, for a new patient registration, new patient, we will see that it is ADT A08, or you might also see ADT A28. And for update, similarly, you will see ADT A04. Sorry, I'm sorry. For ADT, for new patient, you will see ADT A04 and A28. For update patient, you will see ADT A08 and ADT A31. Similarly, for other patient, other messages like appointments and charges, you will see SIU S12, SIU S14, S15, and so on. So this plays a major role, MSH9 plays a major role in identifying what kind of message this is. Just by looking at that, we'll get to know whether it's a registration message or an appointment message or a charge message. And next we have MSH10. MSH10 is message control ID. Message control ID is nothing but the unique ID which is used to identify that message. We'll see that. So when we talk about information, or when we talk about databases, we'll see that there is a unique ID for each and every row that is going to be created in the table. In a very similar way, each and every HL7 message has to be identified separately. So for that purpose, we'll see that there is a unique ID which is called as message control ID in MSH10. So as we will be dealing with hundreds of messages in a day, this will help us to identify or track down one single message which is related to one patient. And this is a required field. Then we have MSH11, which is nothing but the processing ID. Processing ID means whether it's a test message, whether it's a production message, or whether it's a development message. So there are three possible values in MSH11. So all of those three values will be sent, any one of these values will be sent in MSH11, so that the receiving system can understand whether this is a development message or a test message or a production message. And then we have the version ID. So in MSH12, you will see that we have In MSH12, you will see that you have the version, HL7 version indicated. So this plays a major role because the receiving system will have their own standard implementations, which will interpret the message based on the standard which is specified, standard or version which is specified here. And then we have MSH 15 and 16. 15 is for accept acknowledgement and 16 is for application acknowledgement. So there is slight difference between accept ACK and application ACK. First of all, let's see what is an acknowledgement. So what is an acknowledgement? Whenever, let's say, um, whenever we are going to send some courier, we go to the courier shop, we give the courier, and we take a receipt back, which holds as an acknowledgement that we have sent them something. We have given something for them to send it to some other place. So that counterfoil or that receipt will play the role of an acknowledgement that we have given something. In a similar way, whenever we are dealing with sending messages and receiving messages between two different systems, there should be some sort of handshake for the other system to understand whether the receiving system has received that message or not. So in order to serve that purpose, we see that there is a concept of sending an acknowledgement back to the sending system. So what happens whenever a patient is, or whenever any information is flowing from PM to EHR or from EHR to PM or lab, when the source system or the sending system sends a message, receiving system will receive that message and will send out an acknowledgement back to the sending system. So that acknowledgement will serve the purpose and tell the sending system that the message has been received by the receiver. So this is general acknowledgement, and we see that from network perspective as well. We have acknowledgements, or we have ping statistics, which will help us to determine whether there is connection between two systems or not. Specifically, when an HL7 message is transmitted, an HL7 acknowledgement back will help the sending system to determine whether the message has been delivered to the destination or not. But there are again different types of acknowledgement. Two major of them are application acknowledgement and accept acknowledgement. So the main difference between them is accept acknowledgement is an acknowledgement which is sent out to the sending systems soon after the message is received. So what do I mean by soon after the message is received? If the message is received by the receiving system, it will not see whether the message that it received is in the proper format or in the proper HL7 standard, or whether it has followed the proper HL7 standard, whether it has all the required fields or not. All of these validations will not be there when we talk about an accept acknowledgement. A message will be immediately sent back to the sending system stating that I have received a message. So that is called as an accept acknowledgement. Let us look at what is application level acknowledgement. When I say application level acknowledgement, it means that the message that the receiving system received should process correctly and there shouldn't be any errors. Any errors in the sense all the required segments and all the required fields should be present in the message. Once they are present, it will validate and it will see whether that message can be processed successfully without any errors. Once that validation is done, that is when it will send out an acknowledgement back to the sending system. So this process might take little time, few milliseconds when compared to accept acknowledgement, but still it will send out an acknowledgement back to the sending system. That level of acknowledgement where application level validation will be performed is called as an application acknowledgement. Okay, and we have few other fields. So these are not such important. So in most of the cases, you will see till version ID, or you might also see till message 15 or 16 in the message. So these headers indicate few things. So this will indicate the length. This will indicate the data type. So we have two different sessions for data types. First, we will understand the fields, and then we will go through data types to understand what each data type indicates. So there are 89 data types in HL7. Out of them, we will cover around 35 to 40 to understand them better. And this is optionality, whether it is a required field or whether it is an optional field. We will also see few things like B, which indicates backward compatibility. Uh, we will also see W at few instances, which indicates withdrawn, which means that field is no longer is being used in this particular version. And then repetition indicates whether this field can be repeated or not. If it can be repeated, it will indicate the number on how many number of times it can be repeated. Table indicates that these are HL7 defined tables. So there are few tables which are defined by HL7, and we have to follow those tables when we are sending data in this particular fields. And then this is the name of the field, obviously. So any questions so far?
What is the length? You are showing the length is 0.
Right, which means this particular field can be empty. It
Can
is
be
not
empty. But
always
what is the
yes.
is there any max? And just like the 100 character will be the max value for sending application, or is there anything, something limit is there?
For this one, no, we don't have. But for this one, you have. Like if you look at message 10, the maximum limit is 199. So if there is a maximum limit, it will be indicated in the length field itself, length column
Okay.
itself.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. How
Yeah,
do
Joseph.
I how do we identify where's the ascending application and the receiving application again?
So by looking at message 3, you will be able to figure out whether what is the sending application, and message 5 indicates receiving application. So for example, if you look at an HL7 message, you will see that. So when we read the HL7 message, this is MSH1, this is MSH2,
Mm-hmm.
and this is MSH3. So here it is HL7 ADT is the sending application. So this is a test message. This is not a real message. But for real-time messages, for example, if you are dealing with an Epic system, okay, you will see that sending application is Epic. And
Okay.
if the receiving system is a Cerner application, you will see that receiving system, you will see the receiving application name here. So this is
Okay.
MSH3 is the sending application. 4 is obviously the location. For example, let's say it is Salem. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
Salem is the location where we are sending the data from, and Cerner is the application which is receiving the data to some other location. Let's say California. Okay, in this way you will be able to see who is sending, who is receiving in the HL7 message.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so we'll jump to the next slide. So we did look at MSH segment, as MSH segment is the most important segment, not only most important, but the always required segment in each and every HL7 message that we will be dealing with. We have covered it. Now we will take a look at what are the segments present in each message type and what are the important fields of each of these segments. Okay, so when we talk about ADT A04 and A08, we will see that there are various segments that are present within the message. We will see that there are there is an MSH segment, there is an EVN, PID, PV1, GT1, and IN1. So these are the segments that you will be usually seeing in an registration message. So as I said earlier, the each of these segment names itself indicate what information it has. So just by looking at the name, we can understand EVN is nothing but an event segment, which will indicate what event it is, whether it is an A08 or whether it is A28, A31, S15, S14 or what. And PID expands as patient identification segment, PV1 as patient visit segment. So if there is any visit related information, that will be present in patient PV1 segment. And guarantor segment indicates who is the guarantor, and IN1 segment indicates who is the and what is the insurance that the patient has. So we did already take a look at MSH segment, so we won't be looking at that again. We have covered the most important fields of the HL7 of the MSH segment. Now we will take a look at EVN and PID segment for today. So EVN segment, as I said, it is an additional segment. It is not always required to be seen in the HL7 message. But few people will send it. I mean, few people will use it. Few people will not use it. Few applications would send it. Few applications wouldn't. But the two important fields here are EVN1 and 2. So EVN1 is event type code. EVN2 is recorded date and time. So event type code is nothing but what is the event that we are sending in the HL7 message. In this case, A08. So this is the event that we are seeing here. And then EVN2 will have the date and time when this message got generated. So this will be pretty similar, pretty much equal to what we have in MSH7. So MSH7 is the created date and time. In the same way, is nothing but EVN2 is nothing but the created date and time. You will see that we have W here, which means it is withdrawn. So I am following the standards of the latest version, which is 2.7. So all the fields that we will be looking at, or all the specifications that we'll be looking at from 2.7 perspective. But at the same time, as I said earlier, I have covered the most important fields which we come across during real-time implementations. So I have highlighted them so that we can take a look at both 2.3 and 2.5 as well. What were the important fields of those things, so that tomorrow when we are running through any implementations, we'll be able to relate to that.
Can you repeat the WNR? What does it mean?
W is withdrawn, which means in 2.7 this particular field is no more used.
What
But in
does R mean?
2.5 and 2, R means required, which means this particular field has to be there if you are sending an EVN message, EVN segment in the HL7 message.
Okay.
Okay. So now we will look at PID segment. So there are a few important fields in PID segment. PID is nothing but patient identification. As the name itself suggests, it will help us to identify what is the it will help us to identify the patient related information. So in PID1 you have set ID. Set ID is nothing but the sequence ID, which will help us to identify the sequence of the PID segment. And then you have PID2, which is patient ID. So this is withdrawn in 2.7, but you will still see if you are working on an implementation with 2.3 or 2.5, you will still see patient ID being sent in PID2. So we have three different fields, PID2, 3 and 4. These three fields always have patient ID related information. So why do we need to have multiple fields for IDs? Let us talk about a scenario. So when we look at the hospital data, you will see that if the hospital has recently started using their electronic system, then before using the electronic system, they will have the manual methodology of assigning an MRN number. MRN is nothing but medical record number. And you'll also see that there will be a different patient ID assigned by the electronic system that they started using recently. So here we are ending up in having two different patient IDs for the same patient. So to make sure that all the patient IDs are being sent in the HL7 message, we'll have different ID fields. But with 2.7, PID2 and PID4 are withdrawn because PID3 can handle multiple IDs within one field. So we'll take a look at the repetitions after some time, or when we really look at uh, transformers, or when we look at constructing an HL7 message, we'll talk more about repetitions. And PID5 indicates the patient name. So you will have the patient name listed here. The first name, last name, middle initial, and suffix, if there is any, everything will be present in PID5. And then you have PID7, which is nothing but date and time of birth of the patient. PID8 is gender. PID10 is race. So race of that patient, of that particular patient, will be sent in PID10. 11 is for address and 13 is for phone number. So 14 is also for phone number. You will see that it is mentioned as B here. B means backward compatibility, which means this is still being used in HL7 2.7, and this is included in HL7 2.7 version because 2.5 and 2.3 had this and can also be still used in 2.7, and it has been retained to make sure that 2.3 and 2.5 can be still be supported. So maybe down the line they might have some plans to remove this in the future versions, which is why they have mentioned it as B, which is backward compatibility. And then 15 is the patient's primary language, what language they speak, and 16 is for marital status. PID 19 is patient's SSN number, and PID 20 is driver's license number, 22 is ethnic group. So, and other two important fields are whether patients, if the patient is deceased, they will see whether the patient's death date and time is included. So this is usually used in the discharge message. Whenever the patient is getting discharged, you will see that if the patient is deceased, this information will also be present and will be sent back to EHR so that EHR can update this information in its system. Okay, so we will conclude about the segments here today. We'll take a look at the rest of the segments tomorrow, but I would quickly like to show few other tools that we use when we are talking about HL7. So if I want to look at a patient name, I can't keep reading that this is PID 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I know that as a regular user of HL7, I know that PID 5 is name, but there will be few fields which, for example, let us say if I want to understand where is the phone number. Now I should keep reading the fields in order to reach at a point where I say that PID 13 is for phone number. That becomes very difficult. So to make it easy, we have few tools which will divide this or break this message for us and will indicate the numbering for each fields or each components that we have. So few of such tools are HL7 view is one of the tool, and we have HL7 inspector, and there is another smart HL7 viewer. So there are different kinds of tools that you can use. I will quickly show you one of them, which is smart HL7 viewer. So we can load a sample message. So when we load this message, it clearly breaks down the entire message and it will show us what does each field indicate. So here within this message, we are seeing that field number 1 is indicating the field separator, and 2 is indicating the message delimiters, and 3 HL7 sending application, on sending facility and so on. So we don't need to go ahead and read it as we read in the notepad. So you can always paste that information here and take a look at where we are receiving what information. So if you look at PID, we see that patient ID, patient external ID, internal ID, and other information is also present here. So you can use this tool to understand more. And in case if you want to go ahead and look at they have also indicated the data type, and we also see that there are other components as well for each field. So we'll talk about components more when we are dealing with data types, because the number of components in each field depends on the data type that we are going to use. And let me see if I can show you another tool.
These are all open source, freely available,
Yes.
or just
Yes, it
because
is
I
free.
have downloaded the PG clue. Yeah, HL7 clue, sorry, one side there is there.
Okay.
HL7 clue, that is trial version. There is 30-day trial version, something like that.
Okay. No, these are
Okay,
these are free. You can use this one, or you can use HL7 Quick View, which is also free. So this is another one, HL7 Quick View, which will break down the entire message for you, and it will show what is the information present in each field with the specific number. But I like using this one because it gives in detail what information it has and what is the data type. So couple of things. From standards perspective, we see that few fields are required, few fields are optional. But when we talk about real-time implementation, there will certainly be deviations from the standard, and few vendors or clients will be following their own notation of having few required fields, which are optional in the HL7 standard, but they say that they would definitely need that particular field to be sent in the HL7 message. So those types of discussions will happen when we are dealing with real-time implementations, and we will see that there are few deviations from the standards. That is one thing. And when we talk about data types, honestly, I've been working in this industry for past 10 plus years, but only one or two implementations that I have worked with really dealt with data types. In most of the other implementations, we don't much bother about what is the data type when we are dealing with interfaces between PM, EHR, and labs. So that is just outside information in the sense out of box information. But from training perspective, we will be going through all the data types. I mean, the most important 35 to 40 data types that we have, and we'll be covering most of the fields and what are their status from optionality perspective, whether it is required, optional, or withdrawn. We'll be taking a look at that. So any questions? All right. All right, then I will go ahead and share these documents, and Srinivas will share this recording with you. We'll meet tomorrow morning at 7 again. Uh, yeah, tomorrow morning at 7.
thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
You both have a good
Thank
day.
you.